Good afternoon. Welcome once again to Friday Conversations with Reverend Alan. We continue with our topics, very touchy, juicy topics in this program. I just want to welcome Reverend Alan to give us the way forward. Karibu.
I welcome you back. Last week we had a short break because we wanted to regather ourselves. Today and the weeks that are ahead of us, we continue to discuss on toxic relationship. Today we want to deal with toxicity in marriage. Remember that the last time we dealt with toxic husband, toxic wife. So we want to deal with toxicity in marriage because we consider marriage to be made of a husband and a wife. So I welcome you.
Thank you, Reverend Alan, for this wonderful conversation. In the middle there, we have our provost, our vicar, Reverend Nicholas Rotich, AICK Belgut. Karibu. Thank you, our counselor psychologist, Janet Surum Kiplagat. It's always an honor to have you. I just want to welcome our panelists with a question. How do you define, or what is the meaning of toxicity or a toxic marriage?
I would start by saying, when we speak about toxic marriage, it is actually defined by the behaviors of a toxic partner in a marriage. Behaviors that bring emotional pain, emotional hurt, behaviors that is self-centered, behaviors that is characterized by insecurity. When there is one person in a couple that is toxic and the marriage continues, we call that marriage toxic marriage. Or if both persons are toxic, we call it toxic marriage. So when we speak about toxicity in marriage, we speak about those behaviors that are emotionally hurting and draining in marriage that keeps on making that marriage to be a tough journey.
Wow. Vika, what is the definition on toxic marriage?
There's bad behaviors, practices, and feelings and emotions within a marriage context between man and woman who are married. That is what I consider as toxic.
From a counselor point of view, what is toxic marriage or toxicity in marriage?
Okay, thank you once again for having me here. I would say a toxic marriage is a union that is characterized by disrespect and mistreatment of either spouse. And this disrespect and mistreatment is continuous. It is a vicious circle. Yes.
I've had all of you pick on the emotions. Do we limit toxicity on emotions only?
It can lead to the physical, but the most behavior and character is emotional and causes emotional happenings that at some point it can develop to mental health, it can develop to physical, but it's mostly emotional based on feelings that is created.
So we continue. And I want to begin with Janet. How do you detect a toxic marriage? How do you smell there is a rat in this marriage?
I presume that you're talking about how someone can know whether they're in a toxic relationship or marriage, sorry. So one thing I'd say is there's a lot of contemptuousness, madharau. Very small things, but they speak a lot of contemptuousness. So when one spouse feels like I'm not receiving the right treatment, then that is heading or is already toxic. And then another key element is unresolved conflicts. So when you have a conflict, you bury the hatchet and then you move on. So in the long run, you have so much issues because of the things that you did not address. It is always healthy to address an issue as it comes. Don't wait and then all of a sudden you're talking about 5 issues at once. So where there is no communication about unresolved conflicts, then that is toxic. And the last key element I would say is lack of communication. More especially sometimes characterized again by silent treatment or communication on important issues is ignored.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Vika, how do you detect that this marriage is toxic or there is toxicity in this marriage?
Yes, Janet is talking about lack of communication. But then even to qualify more is lack of good communication. Yeah, and where people could be silent, yeah, and then or even if they talk in the wrong terms, yeah. It could also, as well, another way is to blame. Yeah, if you see a marriage where the partners are blaming each other and are full of self-centeredness, yeah, there could be several issues coming in, and you can identify and say, hey, something could be amiss here, and that toxicity keeps on coming, and one thing leads to another. Yes.
Reverend Alan, keep the conversation going. How do you detect a toxic marriage?
I would speak about tension in marriage. There are some marriages that they are in consistent tension. One, among the couple, you can know that your marriage is a toxic marriage, or there's toxicity in marriage every time you are living in tension. Either of you makes the other one uncomfortable, and you live like you are living in a barracks, a war zone area. Every time very careful of what you are saying, lest you be misunderstood. Every time you are careful on where you are going, lest you misunderstood. Because there is an unexplained tension. It's like somebody is waiting for another one to stumble so that they may use it as a point of reaction. Tensions that do not have an end in itself. And sometimes it builds up to the level that there is no communication, there is no action. That's why you discover that some spouses just leave the house early in the morning and they go without telling the other one where they are headed to, or come back without telling the other one, or do things that they cannot tell the other one, because it may spark a conflict that they have not been able to handle over a period of time. So number one, the people outside you, when they come closer to your marriage, they visit, they will know by the tension. The two of you, you will also know by the tension in the marriage. Number two, when truth is being suppressed, a lot of secrets around this couple, that you cannot tell your spouse what you are doing, because the spouse may react badly, and you cannot let them know where you are. You keep on hiding some informations because your relationship is so toxic, you do not know how to handle this thing, and it may lead to a bad thing. So a lot of secrets. If you stumble a couple that they are staying in secret, another one is investing without telling the other one, another one is doing this without telling the other one, that is a bigger sign that they are in a toxic marriage. And if you discover that you keep on hiding some important facts from your spouse, you cannot tell them where you are. You have to lie to them. You cannot let them know what you are doing. You have to lie to them. You need to know that you are in a toxic relationship or a toxic marriage. Number three, I would also say that when personalities are being suppressed, one of you cannot become what they are supposed to be. You have to pretend to be a different person to avoid conflict. Like in a toxic relationship, the toxic partner normally pushes the other one to abandon who they are. They even can abandon their calling. They can even abandon their energy and their relationships and their friends. This other person even controls how the other one dresses, how the other one eats, where the other one goes, what time they should come home. The moment you discover that you have to run home, you leave what you are doing, you have to run home because you fear a conflict at home. You need to know you are in a toxic relationship. The moment you discover you have to hide some temperament that you are having, you need to understand that you are in a toxic marriage. So those are some of the three things that I would want to talk about.
Interesting conversation we have about toxicity in marriage, and maybe just to shed in some more light from picking points that I've had from this able panelist. marriage are defined by roles. There is the role of the husband and the role of the wife. And when we abandon certain roles, then that marriage becomes toxic. Then there's the issue of desertion. When some of you just disappear into thin air, you just go and go. That marriage, you can always say, this person just wake up one morning and leave. There was some toxicity either to the person who left or to the person who was left behind. Which brings me to this question: what are some of the behaviors we see in toxic marriage? Behaviors that are exhibited.
Okay, I can say one of them is blame games. A lot of blame games. When something happens in the house, someone is blamed. When a child behaves in this manner, someone is blamed. When the business does not work, someone is blamed. So the major behavior is blame game. Another one is insecurity. Every time there's an insecurity in marriage, it's like there's something you are hiding or something you want to discover. It is a sign of toxicity in marriage. Insecurity. Someone is insecure. You cannot allow the other one to do or to go because you feel like they can go somewhere. Because of insecurity, there is an element of controlling. There's a controlling. Someone is being controlled. And dominance. Actually, controlling and dominance, they come together. Because you are insecure, you have to control. You have to be in charge of the other person. Abusive words, insults, they are very common. It can be verbal or it can be mute, but it's abusive. It is a sign of, it's a behavior. It's a behavior in a toxic relationship. Mismanagements. Someone just mismanages the family's resources and they don't care. Someone just disappears, as you said, disappears, sleeps outside, and then come back the following day. They don't explain to you. They continue with life, and they are very angry. Actually, there's anger in that marriage. Someone is so angry. Another one lives in fear, and another one in anger, constant anger, and another one so much afraid that let me not ask because it may boil into a war. Yeah.
Vika, Pastor Alan, Reverend Alan has said you just disappear and sleep somewhere and come back. It reminds me of the story of Jonah. He slept in a fish in 3 days, then he came back. Was that a toxic marriage? Let's continue.
And also maybe Abraham taking the child without telling Sarah.
That was a day's event. I'm speaking about Jonah. I'm speaking about Jonah who slept in somewhere for 3 days, then came back, explained to the wife, hey, I was swallowed. Yeah, I am. So, kindly, some of the behaviors that we see in toxic marriages.
Yeah, silence. And where people are silent, they are not able to talk freely. Yes, they just go mute to each other, and they are not sharing anything. Yes, mentioned abuse, and it can turn to be physical abuse. Yeah, fighting, battering, or chopping of limbs, whatever it is. It could be, yes, it could be rape. And rape in marriage, I know that could be debatable, but then abuses in several ways. Could be sexual abuse in marriage. So there could be many. Self-centeredness, jealousy.
Jealousy.
Yes.
Please expound.
Yes, jealous, and well, like you say, if it is something that the other time we were talking about some of those in relationships, and a person is just jealous of what you do. Yeah, it could be if you are continuing in your profession, in your career, and your spouse may not be so happy about it, and so can as well tell you, hey, leave your work, or don't study. Those are behaviors that you can see in
a toxic marriage.
Yes.
Janet, as a counselor, what are some of the behaviors we see in a toxic marriage?
Okay, first I would talk about endless fights. Yeah, you move on from one thing. You're not even moving on because you're piling issues. So from one fight to another, every time there's no peace, it's just about fights and fights. I would also say something about what Reverend Alan said, keeping of important secrets. Remember, we once talked about secrets and then we deferred somehow. So keeping of important secrets, some things that can really break a marriage. Pathological lying is also a trait of toxic marriages. And this line comes because it is already toxic. You have to say something to cover up so that it doesn't. You see, a healthy relationship should be open. People are open to speak about their thoughts without judgment. Another thing I would say is unhealthy competition. I think you also talked about that. Yeah, people instead of being a union, people are competing for some reason that they know best. And then I think for now that's what I can say.
And maybe because it's in marriage, almost every toxic marriage has extramarital affair. It has cheating in itself, because maybe the toxic person becomes a cheater, or the person who is a victim, because he looks or she looks for solace or attention, they end up again try to do some other things. And then again, I would actually say about lies. Lies is very much there to cover up all the things that one is doing. And maybe I can add on everyone doing their own thing. If you go to your family, that's your business. If they have problem, that's their business. Your spouse is not involved in your family. Your spouse is not involved in your education, in what you are doing. They don't care. It's about themselves. They don't care whether you are making it or you are not making it in life. What you are going through in your place of work, they don't care. Stalking is one of them. It's one of a sign of a toxic relationship, because it shows insecurity and it shows lack of respect also to one another. Yeah.
And maybe to add something else, it's in a toxic relationship, it's always one person who calls the shots. Whenever there's something that is worth pondering for two people, it's one person who decides. And there's always a victim and a villain. Even that person who sits, by the way, and accepts to be treated in a toxic way is also toxic. Is also toxic. So there's always a victim and a villain. Someone who is a hero in all this, in spearheading the toxicity. And then there's one who feels that they are always the victim. At that, there is always one person who is always right. And this other person is always wrong. No matter how much you try to make this person happy, they will always see something wrong in what you do. That is a sign of a toxic.
Maybe if I add on what she says,
Yes.
every time one normally absconds their role. If good things happen, they take credit. If something bad happen, they deflect their roles, and they behave like it is the other one that was the cause of this other thing, of this bad thing. There's a deflection of individual roles, as you said. Someone just abdicate their roles in the family. If it's a wife, she doesn't take care of the family, she doesn't cook, she doesn't feed the family, she just walk away. If it's a husband, she doesn't care what the family is eating, he doesn't care about the children going to school, he abdicates his role. It's a sign of toxicity in marriage. As she also said one thing, which is also interesting. In a toxic marriage, one partner can be toxic, but sometimes you wonder what makes the other one to stay. So you cannot exonerate the other one fully. There is something that keeps him staying in that toxic relationship. Maybe he's a prisoner of that toxic relationship, or something else that we can discuss later.
Yes, Vika, do you have something to add?
Yes, I wanted to say, like toxicity in marriage actually permeates. Actually, it affects both. So, and even if one is a victim, the other one was a villain, as she says. But as well, it continues to be, the other one would want to react on being a victim, but then also brings up more venom in the relationship. And so it crisscrosses both of them in a marriage. And at the end of the day, that could be even the third party can come in and become even more toxic. People talk about a relationship and talk about love gotten sore. Yeah, and being sore in that case is being toxic. It's bad because another one has thought of the third one could be another option, and it spoils the whole thing. Yeah, that's the addition to that.
Interesting observations we have on behaviors like yelling, anger, that you are playing safe. Even not having sex in marriage by itself is toxicity. Silent treatment in bed is also very toxic.
Also, people do not keep the rules. You can agree on the rules as a family, but the other one does not keep.
Yes.
People don't
The
keep
issue of
rules.
sex is also very toxic, whereby the woman denies the husband, or the
There is a
husband
denial
denies.
there.
There is denial, yes.
It's one
So,
of the characteristics.
It's one of the behaviors that we see. Which leads me to this question of a yes or no. Then we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Should I stay in a toxic marriage?
No.
No? Should I stay in a toxic
in a
marriage?
toxic marriage, yes and no.
Yes and no?
Yeah.
I would desire to debate.
Okay. We take a short break. Friday conversation with Reverend Alan, and we will be right back. Thank you. Okay, let's continue. Janet, should I stay in a toxic marriage?
I would say no. And I stand no. First, because the effects of the toxicity that you carry is more profound than the importance of the relationship. You see, when two people stay in a toxic marriage, they are not helping each other in any way, and they are not even helping their children. Instead, they are breeding children who will be toxic to the world. They are affecting their own health, the various dimensions of health. And when I analyze, the disadvantages are more than the advantage. Of course, I am an advocate of trying counseling before calling it quits. But if this thing is not even working, why persist?
Vika, with your yes and no?
The yes and no, it depends on the platform you are standing on. And according to me, is that a psychologist will tell you, now we must do some counseling and try to help you so that you can fit in again. A Christian will tell you, yes, marriage is lifelong. It is till death. Yeah. And if you have that strong belief that till death, then toxicity should be something that is handled almost on a daily basis till death. And so I would say, if it is in that thinking, then it is yes. You should no, you should not quit marriage. Yeah, if you are a Christian, then it is no, you should not quit marriage. If you are a legalist, yeah, one who follows the laws of the country, depending on the laws of the country, divorce. Yeah. Quit.
Reverend Alan, you said you want to debate this question.
Yeah.
We allow you to.
Even though I'm a bit slow.
You are a scientist.
Scientist.
Come on.
Okay. Marriage is not about love only. Love is a very important factor of marriage. If I love you, you love me. It's very important. But it consists of trust, respect and honor, security, protection, provision. One build esteem. All those things, they build a marriage. And anytime someone remains in marriage only because of love, it is destruction to the intention of God for humanity. It destroys what we call human dignity, the thing that God placed in a man that is so unique from any other creature. So I would actually say, if there is toxicity in marriage, people should try to resolve up to the level where it is possible. So you only stay in a toxic marriage up to the time when you feel this toxicity cannot be resolved. When you come to a conclusion that it cannot be resolved, the degree has gone high and it is becoming more destructive, you should not say. So the only time you should not say is when it cannot be resolved. You come to a point that this is where we are. It cannot be resolved. And I believe this one cuts across Christians, Muslims, Hindus, atheists,
Scientists.
like myself, all of us, we at some point. And you know, one of the topics that one day we'll come to discuss, we'll come to discuss this issue of divorce one day, but not now.
Okay.
But there comes a time that one must live to live. There comes a time in life one must live to live. If toxicity breaks the trust to a certain level that is irreparable, there comes a time one has to live so as to live.
Wow. Interesting views there. There is a no, a yes, no, and there is a debatable way that Reverend Alan has explained to us, which leads me to this question. There is the elephant in the room. There is toxicity in the marriage. Either there is the villain or the victim, or the aggressor and the receiver. Which leads me to this question. How do you deal with a toxic marriage? How do you deal with it?
You can start with the
How do you deal with
so that we correct the mess that she can cause.
Do you cut off the husks? Do you kill the elephant? Do you feed the elephant? Do you chase the elephant away?
One thing I would say, before even you start dealing with a toxic relationship, I mean how to deal with it, the people here, the two people who are involved, must sit with a counselor. If this is to work, and this is the role of counselors, and the role cannot be. You see the problem. Let me even interject myself. The problem with these toxic people, first, most of them don't believe in counseling. And you see, they don't believe in counseling. They just say we are going to expose our problems.
Aye.
But one thing, these two people must accept that there is a problem. We have always said the key to any healing is acceptance. Now, after acceptance, we go the journey down the iceberg. We say, where did this problem begin? How were you raised up? How was I raised up? How are we treating each other in this marriage? How did this relationship come into existence? Because some relationships are out of convenience, and most are not according to the will of God. And by the way, that is where toxicity, I believe by this, so that is where toxicity begins. So I would say that assess yourselves, your backgrounds, both of you, then be willing to walk. Because if first you are not willing to walk the journey, then this marriage is not going to be resolved. I would just say two things. Accept. Let us take the journey down the iceberg. Let us identify ourselves. Let us know ourselves better. You know, most of the people in marriage start to know themselves better in marriage. That should have happened in courtship. You see? If I understand you before we marry, then it means that I'm able to deal with you better. But we rush, we hide ourselves, then the toxicity is now public.
I tend to think we present the best side of us. We don't present the worst side of us. We want to win.
That one.
In a relationship, we want to win.
You will discover it yourself.
I think you want to win so that you know, when I come to you and tell you, I am a thief, or I aborted, or something like that.
I love you, but I am a thief.
There's a tendency of you going away. So as human beings, we have that tendency of giving the best side of us and not the worst side of us. So the worst side of us is now discovered in marriage, and at times it leads into toxicity, because if it is not dealt with early, or the person who has it does not accept it, then I don't know.
And you lead me to saying that even before the marriage it was toxic. If you are not able to tell this person that
maybe because of fear.
Because of what?
Fear, shame.
No, you are toxic. If you are honest enough, you're going to you're going to present
People
yourself.
fear to be booted. People fear to be abandoned.
But people love you for who you are,
Yes.
despite your past.
Yes, it is. How the question is, how do you
Deal
deal with
this
toxic
toxicity.
marriage? And we must begin from where actually we began marriage.
Mhm.
And for me, is that people come to marriage, and you've just said, people come to marriage when they are veiled, they are hidden in that gown, they are hidden in that suit,
Mhm.
and they present their best. Yeah? But they are not selling, they are not telling themselves, hey, you see, this is me. And if we ask ourselves, yeah, from the beginning, what is it? What is this that we are marrying? Yeah?
And what is it you are marrying?
Yes.
Eh,
Yes.
from
if-
who to what?
yes, we were talking about a thief. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you could be marrying a thief, you're thinking you are marrying a husband
Or a drunkard?
or a drunkard, or you could be marrying
Or a wizard.
or a wizard, or you could be marrying a policeman, you are marrying a pastor. You see, people marry things in marriage, and they are not open enough to say, who are you? The things that define you, the personality of a person. And if you're saying, this is Nicholas, I want to get married to Nicholas, remove the pastor remove the policeman, remove whatever it is in a person, and just live. We want to live with that person. And when we say for better, for worse, and these things for better, for worse, the for worse part is now the toxic part of it. The toxic part of yes, for worse. And it all depends on it all depends.
That's a good
Where does it come from? Some of it comes from me within that marriage. Some of it comes from outside. Yeah.
It's true, Janet.
Yes. Yeah. And because we were never honest enough, and so you just generate.
So
you
the
leave
worst
yourself.
covers you. It's like
Yes,
an
and it
insurance
is like,
cover.
that is the time now you say, oh God, yeah, oh God, what is it that I got married to this? Yeah.
Wow, that's a good one.
So you handle that.
That's the
Redefine.
You've not told me how you
Redefine
deal
the
with it.
vows. I mean, come every time. As she says, canceling, redefining the vows again and saying, hey, you got married to a person and you need to be isolating issues. So take the people through the counseling, pray with them, yeah, pastor them, because some of the things are pastoral issues. Yeah, and
some are
and you-
demons.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, pray, as I say, pray, deliver people.
You know,
Yes.
demons are very toxic.
Yes.
Reverend Alan.
Okay, I
How
would
do you
actually.
deal-
I love the for better hands.
For what?
For worse,
worse.
very debatable. That was is
Yeah.
very debatable. I mostly disagree with the definition of the worst there, but we'll come to it later. Now, I would actually say, even as Janet says, that most people in courtship you need to know the other person, and many a times it's not that you did not know the other person. Most likely, you knew the other person. You knew the toxic level in the person, but most likely you thought that you will manage that toxicity. Most likely you thought you will be in charge and in control. And most people say this one will change. You know, sometimes when people want to get married, the only thing that matters is to get married. They don't care about other things. Tomorrow will take care of itself. So sometimes we are not so much surprised by the toxicity we are seeing in a person, because it's a grown-up toxicity, but you saw it when it was a child. But we can leave that for now. I would actually say, how do I deal with toxic marriage or toxicity in marriage? Number one, I would say, try to resolve it. Try. I am using the word try. How do you resolve it? Does both of you know that your marriage is toxic? Because the toxic person rarely knows that she's the toxic person or is the toxic person. He always thinks that the other person is the toxic one. Number two is the victim normally fears the toxic, the villain, and he cannot or she cannot speak out about the toxicity of the other person. So there is a possibility people continues in marriage. The victim cannot speak because he fears the other one, and the villain always think that the problem is the victim. the victim, the villain always says, justifies what they are doing. They always justify giving an explanation by the behaviors and the failures of the victim. So it is hard for them to come into a point. Number two question would be, after knowing, do you know that you are toxic? Do you know that this marriage is toxic? Does both of you want to stay in this marriage? And this one can bring the two people back to the foundation of their marriage. In the first place, did both of you want to be in this marriage? If yes, now, are you still, is both of you, is it in the interest of both of you to stay in this marriage at this point? Do I want to stay, my partner wants to stay, or is only me who wants to stay and the partner does not want to stay? And why are we staying? Are we staying because we got married? Are we staying because of the children? Are we staying because we have joined investment? All those things are wrong reasons for staying in a marriage. If the foundations of the marriage is destroyed, which is love, which is trust, which is honor and respect, which is protection and preservation, all those foundations, if they are destroyed, all these other reasons as to why we are staying in a marriage becomes toxic in itself. Therefore, I would come to a place and say, number one, discover yourselves that you are toxic. Your marriage is toxic. And who is toxic in that marriage? Help the toxic person to understand. And why have you entertained the toxicity? Number two, sit together, see whether you can handle it, the two of you, or you need to involve another person to help you in handling it. The only problem with toxic marriages, they always have people to blame. And the people that will most likely help them are the ones that are going to be blamed. Therefore, the toxic person will also blame the person that is to help that marriage. So it becomes difficult for that marriage to be helped. Number three, after seeking help, maybe you go to a counselor, maybe a pastor, or even family members, or even leaders, community leaders. You can even go whenever you want to go if you want the marriage to survive, but both of you want the marriage to survive. And then try to separate issues. See which issues you can handle at what time and what issues can be handled slowly. That is, if all of you are in agreement, you want to come out of it. But if it becomes very difficult, give one another a break for a while so that the other person comes to a conclusion, I want to stay or I don't want to stay. And the same to you. But I normally advise people, don't give each other a break without talking. Come into an agreement. What kind of a break are we giving each other? And what is the expectation of you during this break time? And what is expected at the end of the break time? Are we doing the break time so that we may come together, or we allow ourselves to ventilate? And then maybe I would say, if it doesn't work, if I say definition of marriage, if one does not want to stay in that marriage, it's not a marriage. Whether in paper or not in paper. If the couple, one doesn't want to stay in a marriage, it is not a marriage. Because marriage is two adults who are willing and they love one another. That is a definition of marriage. And they say in a covenant.
Yes.
And that covenant is faithfulness. Till death do us apart. So the moment one partner is not willing, the moment one partner is not willing, even if you are in marriage, and one partner is not willing to stay in this marriage, it's not a marriage. The moment there is a brokenness of the covenant, it's no longer a marriage. It's a different thing. It's a different union. And people must always confront it as it is so that they may continue to live.
Oh, there's the issue of confronting those toxic behaviors.
Yeah. And then again, talk. Don't keep quiet. Talk. Talk to your partner and talk to other people. If it gets to a certain level, tell the parents, tell friends, tell relatives before you make another move.
Wow. Then there's the issue of confronting, the issue of talking. There's the issue of now also accepting that this marriage is toxic. You know, denial is a hindrance to dealing with a toxic marriage. It's good for you to come to a place where that you accept I am toxic or we are in a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
It's good to accept I have been the receiver the other person has been the aggressor, or I have been the villain, and the other person has been the victim. Which brings me to an interesting conversation that I want us to engage. How to thrive in a toxic marriage. Can someone survive in a toxic marriage? And what are some of the tips that we need to engage? Because, you know, there is the issue of age. There is the issue, you know, people can stay until they are 60 and then we wonder, where will I go? Then the issue of interest that are so high, maybe business investments together, joint bank accounts. Then there's the issue of children. You want to be a shield so that these children cannot be toxic. And which brings me to a very interesting conversation, how to thrive in a toxic marriage. People survive in the desert. People survive accidents. People survive bad conditions. And I want us as panelists just to engage our minds how to thrive in a toxic marriage.
So I start.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can. Number one is sometimes the toxicity in marriage is because we don't know each other well. So one way of surviving in a toxic marriage is keep on learning each other. Keep on learning your partner. If your partner is the toxic one, keep on learning them. Why are they toxic? Maybe there is something they don't know in life. Maybe they have a wrong teaching somewhere. And as you keep on learning them, try to unlearn them of the behaviors that you think is toxic. I'm telling you, not every toxic man is toxic because they know that it's toxic. They think this is how to behave. Remember, like this traditional African mentality that men are normally told, never share your secret with your wife. That's a toxic behavior. But somebody that comes from that mentality may think that this is the right way to go. Don't trust your wife. Don't even sleep with her in one bed, which is a toxic behavior. If you get a modern woman, that's why sometimes it's good to marry of your caliber, who also believes in the same behavior. Number two, keep on unlearning the other partner of those behaviors in good times, not in quarreling time. Number two, keep on forgiving and forgiving and forgiving. Marriage survives only by forgiving. Actually, people who have stayed in marriage till the end are the people who have learned to forgive each other till the end. Learn the Jesus way. 7 times 70 times 7. Keep on forgiving and forgiving and forgiving. This one will keep on creating more room for you to embrace the other person. Number three, keep on talking. Don't keep quiet. Keep on protesting and talking. Every time a toxic behavior is exhibited, don't keep quiet. Because keeping quiet is validating it. It's telling that person this is the right thing. Avoid massaging evil egos. Somebody is doing wrong and you massage and you say, you see, it was accidentally. You can also survive by playing rough sometime also. Confrontational. Confront the person.
An eye for an eye.
Not so much, but just play a hardball with the person. Make sure that person knows that you don't like it and you can fight back. Especially if the person wants the marriage to remain. Play hard. Don't be passive. Play hard. Hit back once in a while, but don't hit in a toxic manner, because toxic plus toxic is equal to toxic. So you avoid hitting in a toxic manner. I would also say, lastly, in protests, do some actions that would make the other one to think. Like in the labor law, when the employer is not behaving, you riot. You strike. That is crying for the attention. Even in relationship, you do those actions. You can riot in some areas. You can take advantage. For example, you will do it. Yeah, sometimes you can even move out of home, which we call separation. Sometimes you can even go to your own other places and continue to make the other person think, to get their attention. Yeah.
Yeah. Marriage is something that we begin with a premise of love. And we love, actually. We do love and desiring desiring another person, desiring that which you don't have yourself. You see, marriage is where sex is actually practiced without any twinge of conscience that it is accusing you. Yeah, marriage is a place where, well, let us not say man and woman, but then let us say male and female can come together and complement each other.
So there is a difference. Okay.
Yeah, because if we marry, and according to me, if we are marrying as men and women, we are marrying people who are wired in different ways. And it is that wiring, those different ways are the ones that actually become toxic later on in our lives. Yeah? Some people don't just believe in trust. Some people don't just believe in the right way to love. People don't know how to love without sex. Yeah? And those could be men and women. For me, is that how to build marriage that lasts is to define the values in that marriage and how we came into it. We came into it as equal, and it is a covenant based and also defined by love. It's a covenant defined by chastity, defined by honesty, defined by faithfulness. You see those things, and so we must continue to reaffirm that, and also to desire the other person. You see, keep on looking at the other person in a more valuable way, and so build on the good things that a person has. And that is what I may want now to call for good, and then for the areas to improve.
Okay. Yes. Janet, how does one thrive in a toxic marriage?
Maybe I'd just say, because I'm actually for the what Reverend was saying, the hard part, as in
hardball.
The hardboard thing, yes. Because it is something very difficult, actually. In as much as I would say that everyone has a weakness, as a person, reflect also on your weaknesses so that you try to understand the other person. But I'd also say organize yourself while in the marriage, because the end is mostly divorce or separation. So even me, I know it is not something the majority would agree as professional, but I would say organize yourself, build yourself, be a better woman, be a better man, understand yourself better, so that in the case of an eventuality, you'll not die, pap. At least you've been cushioning yourself.
You prepare.
For worst time.
Yes, for worst time, because it always ends that way. Like they say in premium tiers. So you organize yourself.
That's another one.
Okay, interesting. Maybe I can say
Myself in this case is the individual person, as a man and as a woman.
As a woman, organize.
That just in case
it's like you're planning a takeoff.
Chochote chaweza kutokea.
Yeah, I read somewhere that people were so toxic, and then they climbed up a building and they decided to kill each other. I just want to justify what Janet is saying. So the man and the woman said bye. So the woman jumped, and the man realized she had a parachute. So she landed, and the man did not jump off the building. So that's how to survive a toxic marriage. When the woman jumped, she had a parachute.
Witty.
And the man never. They said 1, 2, 3 goes. The woman jumped, she had a parachute. And the man never even jumped off the building.
Smart.
So it's very interesting. Yeah, to plan yourself. It's called planning to take off. Planning to take off, which is very interesting. Which leads me to I was reading a copy of a magazine some months back or so, last year, and they discussed on some careers that lead into toxic marriage. Top 10 careers. And I know it's debatable. And among these top 10 were teachers, pastors, doctors, lawyers, flight attendants, policemen, IT specialists. So maybe it came to me when Vika was sharing about separating a career from a person. But I find it very difficult, because they were saying if you marry these 10 types of careers, these people in this career, there is a high level of toxicity in terms of adultery, in terms of unfaithfulness, in terms of toxicity. Which brings me, as we want to end the show, your closing remarks. I know I don't want to go into those issues of career. I'm not a career expert, but they just highlighted 10 top careers that lead into toxic marriages. So what are your
I
closing
think it's
remarks?
those are careers, the level of
Social
vulnerability,
Yeah.
social vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
There are some careers that don't expose the marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and there are careers that exposes the marriage a lot.
Mhm.
I think like pastor, like doctor,
Lawyers,
yeah,
doctors.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also looking at it as separating the career from the person.
Mhm.
When I was early in marriage, my husband kept telling me, I'm not a teacher in the house.
Mhm.
Because I had those teacher traits in the house.
Keep quiet.
Yes,
Sit down.
organizing everyone, you know. And I
Having
discovered it was toxic.
A working scheme in the
Yes.
house.
Okay, now
An accountant at home.
at home. Yeah, so for my closing remarks, I'd just say this. For those who are not married, watch out for these toxic traits that we have talked about at length. And don't think that you will ever change this person who is toxic. You marry, again, I'd advise you to marry your friend. Your friend will not go to some extent to be toxic towards you. For those who are in toxic relationships, accept that you're both wounded and you've both wounded the other person. So take a journey down the iceberg and try to identify where this problem began, and accept that you're also human and the other person is also human. But where it doesn't work for me, quit. Doesn't get better.
Yes, for me is that toxicity in marriage is that we should actually understand again, where is it coming from? Yeah, what is causing it? This poison in marriage. So if we can isolate that and maybe try to treat it, and if it is treatable, then we will continue living a happy marriage. Happy ever after. And life is full of challenges, and so some of those challenges are coming from without, and they could be toxic in our lives. It could also be within us, that we do want several things, and maybe some of those desires, some of those expectations when we were getting into marriage, we did not meet them, and so we begin to have some resentment and lack of belief in that institution of marriage. For me, is that depending on where are you coming from, and I will continue saying, if you are a Christian, Jesus would say, till death you part. And the Bible will always talk about that, and we want to live. It is something that is a little bit difficult for us, but then it is achievable for us. If you are one person who is not religious, is that try some of those mechanisms to of removing the toxic in marriage. Talk to each other, leave, sue, divorce, if you are secular, and you will live a happy life. And in that case, that is what defines your marriage. It is a contract that ends by this time. And so for me today is that I would want to ask individuals to be honest before they get into this institution of marriage. Be open to each other so that you are able to be reading from one script when you are beginning this covenant.
Thank you.
I would say, don't get lost in marriage. Find yourself in a marriage, and find yourselves in a marriage. You came into this marriage to make each other happy, to be compatible, to help one another, and you should play your role and help the other one to play their role. Try as much as possible to become one, because that is the intention of any marriage, be it Christian, secular, religious. It is the intention that you become as one as possible. Marriage can only survive because God helps and because of the grace of God. Keep on seeking God every time, so that the grace of God will help you to survive in that marriage. Be quick to forgive. Be quick to let go. Don't keep records of evil every time. Allow your partner to grow. Do not impute sin in them. If they repent of their sins, every sin is forgivable, provided there is repentance. Try to separate issues, mistakes, weaknesses, and wickedness, and try to know which one can be handled and which one cannot be handled. Quitting marriage should be the last thing ever that one should think of. That's why they say till death. Actually, quitting marriage should be a neighbor to death. So try to work very much to make sure that your marriage works. From the point where you are now, try to work it out. If you're having a spouse that is toxic, try to see yourself in that toxicity. Start by handling yourself. Maybe your reactions and your response keeps on building that toxicity. God loves you. Jesus died for your marriage, and He can heal every marriage. As Janet said, all of you are wounded. Try to address the wound together. Sometimes anger and wound may make you to take a bad step. Remember, you married so that you may be happy. If you are not happy, ask yourself, when I leave this marriage, will I be happy? If you will be happy, maybe you can discuss others. If you may not be happy after this marriage, try to work on the marriage. Marriage comes from heaven. Let us keep it holy and pure. Thank you.
Wonderful conversation, wonderful people, wonderful insight, wonderful brains today we've had in this conversation. I have really enjoyed, and I want to wrap up this show by saying toxicity is real, and there is a quote from Albert Einstein that says, women marry men hoping they will change. Men marry women hoping they will not. So each is inevitably disappointed. Thank you for being with us. See you next Friday. Friday conversation with Reverend Alan. God bless you.